Welcome to the Taylor Show, filmed here in good old Taylor, Texas. Boy, do we got a treat for you today. Hopefully it was worth the wait. Taylor City Managers Brian, Jeff, and Tom sit down with Ryan to discuss, what else? The growth of Taylor. They share some of Taylor's current advantages and challenges going forward. Rest assured, they'll leave you with the sense that managing a city is a lot more complicated than you probably thought it was. What with things like fiscal responsibility and utilizing existing infrastructure and whatnot. They aim to grow Taylor a bit differently than some of our neighbors to the west. You can check out the YouTube page, get the link there on the website if you want to listen to the fully uncut, unedited interview as well. This is Drew, that's Ryan, and this is the Taylor Show.
So my name is Brian LaBorde. I'm the city manager with the city of Taylor. And to my right and left, I want to introduce the team. So with anything that's happening, you got to surround yourself with good team players. So on my right, Jeff Jenkins, our deputy city manager. On my left is Tom Yantis, our assistant city manager and director of development services. And these guys, they oversee a lot of departments. Tom, I guess you can say, but these guys oversee a lot of departments as well and split it up. So I thought it'd be fitting to bring some of the team players here that make things great with the city and all that administration.
So what makes Taylor unique from different towns y'all have all worked in?
The thing I would say, I think, is that it still really is an intact small town. You know, it has a real sense of place, and it's got that historic character to the downtown, to the neighborhoods. And the cool thing about Taylor is, you know, it was once the most thriving city in Williamson County. You know, for 100 years, it was the biggest city in Williamson County. So it has that sort of sense of itself of that time when it was, you know, in its heyday. And I think that maybe we're on the cusp of that coming back again.
Right.
So
one other thing I would add is people. I mean, there's some of the best people I've ever worked with. Every day I'm blessed to get to work with these guys and work on trying to raise the bar each and every day for the city of Taylor and improving the quality of life. But just the people in general that we interact with, they make you feel at home. This is their home, Taylor's home, and they're inviting. I mean, that's one thing that I really appreciate. I've worked in other communities where it's not as inviting, and here in Taylor, I feel welcome. It's my home.
Well, we know Taylor is about to experience a lot of growth. And I think one common sentiment around town is that we want to grow different from other towns. You know, you look around the county, some other towns have grown in a way we don't want to. What's the steps we're taking, and what's the direction we're taking to grow that different right way?
$64,000 question for the future of Taylor is, are we going to follow in the path of what's happened to a lot of the towns around us that have experienced really fast growth, which is, you can see the results of that, you know, just driving around some of those communities? Or are we going to kind of respect the historical way in which this town grew, which was incremental and expanding over time out from the core? And what you see that happens in a lot of suburban communities is you have this expansion of development past where the existing infrastructure systems are. And so some people call it leapfrog development, some people call it suburban sprawl, whatever you want to call it. It's this idea that no matter where the land is available, it should be developed. We're taking a little bit different approach and saying, look, we need to really focus in on where we've already made investments in existing infrastructure systems. So where we've got existing streets and water lines and sewer lines, we need to make good use of those before we start to build new stuff outside of that core.
When developers come into town, the first thing they talk about is downtown. They mention it constantly. So that's what makes Taylor special. Is we don't want to be like Hutto or some surrounding communities. We want to be Taylor. And so that's one end of it. It's being balanced and strategic. And then, like Brian said, it affects everything else. Your financials, it can affect how your park maintenance is. So by growing kind of the way that we need to grow and focus with the comprehensive plan we adopted, it's going to allow that strategic, balanced approach long term that'll help us be able to maintain our community and grow appropriately.
Now, what is a project you could point towards? And it doesn't have to be a real one. It could almost be like a dream project of what you'd like to see, that follows these sort of lines on what y'all want to bring.
Well, I think of it in a couple of different ways. One would just be redeveloping downtown. To me, that is where we'll get a super high return on investment. If you look at downtown, and we have we're sitting in one of those examples right now, right? So this building, before it was rehabilitated, was on the tax rolls for almost nothing. And now it's on the tax rolls for a lot. And so, and the city really didn't have to do anything, right? We didn't have to invest any money because the infrastructure was already in place. The streets were here, the water lines, the sewer lines. So just people reinvesting in the core will have a super high return on investment for the community. So the city needs to encourage and incentivize more of that to happen. So we've got a lot of vacant lots downtown. There could be new development that occurs on those vacant lots. We've got old buildings that are underutilized. They could be brought back into productive use. So that's probably the thing I think that's most exciting, that we can just repopulate the core of downtown with revenue generating land uses. Then the flip side for me is new development on the edges of town. If we built neighborhoods in a little bit different model, which is a little bit more complete, where it has a higher variety of housing types, it might not just be single family detached, it could have some townhouses and some duplexes and maybe a little small apartment complex, but it could also have a mixed use building at the entrance that has a coffee shop and some apartments above. That's the type of neighborhoods that we used to build in Taylor, right? Those are the traditional type of neighborhoods. So we've gotten away from that, and a lot of the fault in that is cities themselves because of the rules that they've adopted for development. We adopted these single-use zoning categories that didn't allow for that variety of and that mix in new neighborhoods. And so we just need to get back to how we traditionally developed neighborhoods before we implemented those restrictions through zoning. And so that's part of the next step in this process, is figuring out how do we fix the rules so that we can get more of the type of new development that we want.
On that a little bit, but on downtown, I'll probably give a little credit, definitely the city council and staff. Back in 2017, I don't know if y'all remember, but 2017, we didn't have the skate park, and we didn't have, we had Heritage Square, but it wasn't the gathering place it is today. And so that was one of the, starting positions that council said we were going to not only going to encourage development and work on our comprehensive plan, but we're going to walk the walk too and invest in our downtown. And so that was one of my favorite projects I got to be involved with, was Heritage Square and the skate park. Now I'm not going to try my skateboard or bike in Harris, but I like my job too much. I don't want to get hurt down there. But anyway, yeah, that's the kind of things that our council and staff have been looking toward to also walk the walk.
Well, I know this is such a new way of doing things, and you might get some pushback here and there. As a response to that pushback, kind of what do y'all want the citizens of Taylor to know?
The test is about to come. I mean, the plan was great, it was all, but now putting it into place, put it into action, and carrying that for the longevity of it, because it's just not overnight. It's going to be incremental, and so continuing with that, and this is something to continue on even after us, and how we can continue with this, and what do we put in place now for someone else then the next administration to carry forward and continue with. That's where it's going to be challenging. A lot of communities have faced it, where all of a sudden, from politically, the mindset changes, the plan gets shelved, and then go back to before, or not even have anything.
And, balancing expectations a little bit. If you've looked over the last 3 to 4 years, I mentioned we did Heritage Square, the skate park. Drainage is another area where systematically we had a list of projects where there was flooding, and we've knocked those out over time. So as Taylor, we have a good, solid record of getting things done and working toward those. So I would say, hey, if we spend all of our money trying to do every single thing, it would be maybe a little bit too much all at once. And so, or it could make us bankrupt even. You don't want to do those kind of things. So we got to be systematic, manage and balance everything, and we've got a good track record of making things happen, and it will. And this plan's part of it to refocus and look at what we want to be long term. So.
Awesome. Well, I know saying one thing and doing one thing, it's two different things, but I'm glad that y'all are the team in charge of leading the way. And I appreciate y'all coming out and doing this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.